Hey there, and hi now. Welcome to the Human Meme Podcast. I'm David Bowles, and today we'll discuss the word that lets you look. You will be carried through a set of doors. Not today, probably, but the day is coming, and it will not be a day you choose. An accident chooses it, or a diagnosis does, or a phone call at 4 a.m. about somebody you love. You will go through those doors, and you will be right to go, because on the other side of them are the only people who can help you. I want to say that plainly at the start. The building saves far more people than it hurts. There is no boycotting the hospital, and nobody should try. Now I want to ask you a different question. What came home with you? In 2002, I was teaching in a school of public health in Newark. I had been hired by a physician named William Halperin, who had spent a career at the Centers for Disease Control counting the dead. He hired a playwright on purpose. He thought his students had been trained into a precision that had cost them something, and he wanted somebody to loosen it. One afternoon, with the door shut, he asked whether I knew the word nosocomial. I did not. I put the same question to my graduate students the following week. Not one of them knew it either, and several were already working in clinics and health departments. Nosocomial means hospital acquired. It names an illness you did not have when you went in and are carrying when you come out. Here is what I have not been able to set down since. That word is more than 100 years old. Somebody needed it. Somebody coined it and taught it, and handed it down through generations of physicians who have said it ever since without a flinch. Think about what a word like that is for. It is a container built to hold something unbearable at a manageable temperature. Say hospital-acquired infection often enough and it becomes a line item. Say adverse event, and the blood drains out of it. Call a death a mortality outcome and you have moved it into a spreadsheet where it can be totaled and compared and discussed on a Tuesday afternoon without anybody's voice breaking. That is cultural code, and it replicates. It is taught in medical school, carried into hospitals, repeated in committees, and every time it is spoken, it performs its function, which is to let good people look directly at a horror and feel almost nothing. I came to the word late in middle age with no clinical training at all. I heard it once and could not put it back down. That lateness turns out to be a form of sight. The people who feel a horror last are sometimes the only ones left who can still see that it is one. The proof is older than the ventilator. Vienna, 1847. A doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis runs a maternity clinic where women are dying of childbed fever in numbers that should have emptied the city of its faith in medicine. He notices that the ward staffed by physicians kills far more mothers than the ward staffed by midwives. Then a colleague cuts himself during an autopsy and dies of something that looks like what is killing the women. And Semmelweis understands. The doctors are walking from the dissecting room to the delivery bed, and they are carrying it on their hands. He puts a basin of chlorinated lime at the door. The death rate collapses. His colleagues destroyed him for it. A finding like that asks a doctor to accept that he is himself the hazard, that the hand trained to deliver the child is the hand carrying the death. And there is no colder thing to ask a man to believe about himself. Evidence can be overwhelming and lose anyway, because what stands against it is the entire identity of the person being asked to accept it. Semmelweis was committed to an asylum, beaten by the attendants, and died there of the same class of infection he had spent his life trying to stop. That is where the book started. It is not where it stayed. Once you have seen the shape, you cannot unsee it. a house raised to end a harm, producing that harm through its ordinary operation, while every person inside it is doing the job as taught. The prison built to stop crime and schooling its inmates in it instead. The asylum named a place of safety, the classroom that promises to open a child's mind and then measures, year after year, the closing of it. The parish and the camp and the troop, where the trust that makes the good work possible is the same trust that makes the predator possible, the study that priced a child's blood against a cheap repair, and the faith that promised to carry its people out of the world and kept that promise the only way it ever could. Nobody drew any of those lines on purpose. That is the part that should keep you awake. There is a moment in the book where I turn the test on myself. 6 chapters before the end, I set down a rule for telling a floor of harm from an alibi. 5 conditions written to disqualify other people's claims. Then I ran that rule across the part of the American hospital infection rate I had been calling a floor, and it failed on 3 of the 5. The floor sits lower than I had put it, and I cannot tell you where. I left the failed test standing on the page in the order it failed, because the failure is worth more to this argument than the verdict I expected. A rule like that only earns its keep when somebody runs it and prints what comes back, including the times it comes back against the person who built it. So what do you do with it? The book refuses to close on a cure, and admits as much on its first page. What it asks for is smaller than a cure and harder than a motto. Name the floor. The harm welded to the function that cannot be removed without ending the thing people need. Remove everything that is not the floor. The harm chosen somewhere upstream and then dressed in the language of necessity so that nobody would ever have to answer for it. Tell the patient the truth about what the cure is carrying into them. And when the machinery does harm, refuse the comfort of a blame that settles on nobody at all. That last one is the hardest, because a structure full of ordinary people, each holding a piece of the weight, is the most comfortable arrangement human beings have ever built. It offers no one to hate. And the villain, once you remove him, leaves the structure standing, and the next harm already forming behind him. Do harm, nosocomial disease, and the institutions that manufacture the harm they promise to cure, is available now from David Bowles Books in ebook and paperback, with everything gathered at bowlesbooks.com. Bill asked me that question across a desk 24 years ago, and then answered it himself because I had nothing to give him. This book is the answer I have spent the time since assembling. For the Human Meme Podcast, I'm David Bowles, wishing you a safe evening and a healthier tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Be a human meme.